I hope you're well and welcome to tutorial number 1. Today we're going to be talking about how to create a new project. We simply start by clicking the new project button from our home screen. We then select the relevant category that applies to us. I'm going to do laboratory equipment. We enter a project reference. Laboratory 123, we add a test description or a product description. I'm going to use a centrifuge. We then select the relevant tabs that are applicable to our products that we want to approve. So the first part is the geographical location, and we're going to select United Kingdom and European Union. We then select the relevant characteristics of the product, whether it be large-scale equipment, battery product, or whether it's supplied with packaging, etc. I'm going to select mains voltage with active electronics, and that's it for the time being. We can then select any specific EMC functions. If the items that are here do not apply to your product, then you simply don't click them. We move down to the next stage, which these are select the relevant part 2s of the standards, the safety standards, and we can see over here that there's a centrifuge. So we've got a centrifuge, so we're going to select that one. Radio devices. So if there's any radio devices on the product, we'd simply click radio device, and then the relevant protocol that applies to us. This part down the bottom is if any other CE marking directives may or may not be applicable to us. They're quite diverse, so it's unlikely that they're going to apply to you, but you may have some pressure equipment in your product, or you may have some machinery aspects that you may need to select. I'm going to leave this one for the time being. There's also 2 options at the bottom here. So do you want to create a new project? And you can simply tick yes or no. So you can do a compliance strategy review, create a report just without creating a project, or equally you can create a project without creating a compliance strategy report. I'm going to do both to show you how it works. The next thing we do is click the submit button. To have selected the submit button, it downloads and creates 2 files for you, European Compliance Strategy Review and a UK Compliance Strategy Review. We simply open the first one, European Compliance Strategy Review. It opens in a editable Word document. So we just click Enable Editing, and you can see that it references our project name, Laboratory 123. It takes into account the product description, and this is where you can simply add more information, more detail, images, etc. It takes the parameters that were selected, i.e. mains powered equipment, and that it contains active electronics, and it's for use in the domestic market. And then it will list the relevant directives, CE marking directives, that are appropriate for this type of product. We can see that the low voltage directive has been selected with a brief of the scope, and then below it references the relevant standards. So because it's laboratory equipment, it's referenced the 61010, control and laboratory use, the general requirements, part 1. And then because we selected centrifuges, it's picked the part 2-020, which is specifically for centrifuges. Moving on to the next directive, it's selected electromagnetic compatibility due to it having active electronics. It's selected the recommended standards 61326, which is the EMC requirements for control and laboratory equipment. It's also selected the 61000-3-2, which is harmonic current emissions, and 61000-3-3, which is fluctuations and flicker. The next directive it's selected is the ROSH directive, which is relevant to any sort of electrical equipment. To reference the standard 63000. So that's all of the CE marking directives that it's selected. This part here, additional CE marking directives, would have come into play if we'd have selected any of the additional CE marking directives that we thought were relevant. We didn't select any, so no other CE markings have been taken into account. We've also identified a few non-CE marking directives, so these are still relevant, but they're not CE marking directives per se. They include the REACH, which is a restriction of hazardous substances, and the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment, the WEEE directive. And those are the two additional directives that are relevant and we need to find information for. So that is the legislation and some of the appropriate standards that need to be applied for our laboratory centrifuge. The UK report is virtually identical to the EU report, however it references the UK legislation rather than the European legislation. Okay, so if we go back to the project and we go back to our main, if we go back to Smart Cert and the main project area, and we select current projects, and we can search for it here. Laboratory 123, we can see that we've created a project of Laboratory 123, and that is our first tutorial for new projects and how to start a new project on Smart Cert. I hope it was informative and useful to you, and yeah, please check out the rest of our tutorials, our following tutorials going through other features of Smart Cert. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.